Welcome to this week's episode of The Road to Indy, presented by Southern Seminary and Boyce College. Scott McDowell joins us this week to talk about church planting in Indiana. Scott, thanks for taking the time to be with us this week.
It's great to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Now, you serve as the church planting catalyst there in Indianapolis, and you're a church planter and have been in the state for some time. So kind of give us your journey to becoming a church planter and now, I guess, the church planting catalyst in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so I grew up in the state of Indiana. I grew up in Evansville, and my earliest ministry memories were involved in church planting. And so when I graduated from Southern Seminary, I thought, well, we should be involved in church planting. Indianapolis is a sin city in my backyard. Why don't we go to Indianapolis and plant a church? And so we moved in 2012 to be a part of planting a church in Avon, Indiana, a suburb of Indianapolis. And in the Lord's kindness, had the opportunity just to be engaged and involved in church planting from that point forward here in this city, and came on board with the North American Mission Board and Send Network in 2019. And then just recently had the opportunity to become the Sin City missionary here in Indianapolis.
So talk to us about the city. You said you planted in Avon. I know there's different areas of the city that churches are popping up everywhere, planting all over the city. Talk to us just maybe, some of the gains you've seen, some of the, you mentioned before we started recording how things are kind of snowballing and kind of getting some momentum there in Indianapolis.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, Indianapolis is an interesting city. Indianapolis is full of lots of people that would describe themselves as good and connected to a church. But as you have conversation with them, it's religion, not relationship. And so there's about 2 million people in our city. The vast majority of which would say they're connected to a church, but actually don't have a relationship with Jesus, don't attend anywhere. And there's lots of church buildings, but very few people in them. And so honestly, a lot of the church planting efforts here in recent days has been what we call animating the static. Taking people who maybe are affiliated with the church in some way and may have a relationship with Jesus and have just grown accustomed to being attenders rather than active in their faith. Or they may not even be followers of Jesus at all. They just attend church because it makes them feel like that makes them a good person. And so in the Lord's kindness, we've seen a lot of growth as we've planted churches all over the city. One of the things, honestly, that's really interesting about Indianapolis is no matter what kind of church planting you feel called to, Indianapolis has an avenue to express that. So we have urban and suburban. We have rural. We have a growing number of immigrant church planting opportunities and everything in between. And so we actually hosted some prospective church planters not too long ago. And one of the comments that was made was, wow, seems like no matter what it is you want to do, you could probably do it here in Indy. And I said, that's exactly right.
Well, that's a great look at Indianapolis. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the rest of the state. I mean, you mentioned you're from Evansville down in the southwest corner. You've got Fort Wayne up in the northeast corner. You got Gary and Hammond up in the northwest, Terre Haute to your west. I mean, there's a lot of things going on across the state, church planting wise.
Yes, there are. To be honest with you, one of our hotbeds or growing areas is the South Bend area. There's a number of churches that have been planted there in recent days. There's also a growing number of efforts to plant in rural communities. A lot of Indiana is rural, and it's a challenge to plant in rural communities. But the Lord's raising up guys who have a heart for a rural community and they have a background in small town work and ministry. And so we're seeing that grow as well. But just recently, we had a church that was planted within the last 4 or 5 years. They've hosted a residency. They're getting ready to send out their first guy. And they have another resident about to start. And so it's really cool to see what the Lord's doing all across the state. Bringing guys who were raised up from in their hometowns and going back to plant in their communities.
Yeah, that's great. And, the line always is churches plant churches.
That's right.
And to have church plants, with these residencies, and we see that across the country. I was in Montana earlier this year, or late last year, I guess. It's 2024 now. So late last year, I was in Montana. Then there was a big residency group there where they're planting across the state of Montana in rural areas and more urban areas. There's not too many urban areas in Montana, but they have them. But we're seeing the same thing. So we're seeing it across the country, seeing it in Indiana, which is really encouraging as well. So maybe what are some ways that people may, if they want to get involved in church planting in Indiana or, connect with the church planters, how can they do that?
Yeah, a number of ways. One of the ways I tell everybody that you can be involved is, and it sounds really silly, but follow them on social media, because then you stay up to date on what they're doing, what challenges they're facing, what events are coming up, and then use that as a prompt to pray. So as they're posting videos and photos and upcoming events, be reminded to pray for them, pray for the planter and his family, pray for that church. So the one thing that everybody can do unilaterally is pray. And I think it's one of the things that we seem to minimize, and it's so crucial. Send words of encouragement. It doesn't take long. You can hop on a church plant's website and find the planter's email address. Send them a specific word of encouragement. Consider how you might financially partner. If your church is involved in church planting, have a conversation about the needs that are happening here in Indianapolis and Indiana in general, and how you might maybe partner together with a church planter financially. Sending mission teams. All of our church planters, we have one about to launch here in the next couple of weeks. He's hosting some mission teams that are going, and they're just helping to raise awareness about a launch that's coming up. They're passing out door hangers and doing some other things in the community. And then the last one, and this one's not, it may sound radical, but the Lord's doing it. Consider going. Yeah. Consider whether or not the Lord would call you to go and participate as a core team member. We actually have a church planter who, one of his core team members, moved to Indianapolis because his job was work from home and he could do it anywhere. And he actually relocated his family to Indianapolis to be a part of a church plant because the need is that great.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's really cool. So how can they connect with you online? You mentioned connecting with church planters online. How can folks connect with you online?
Yeah, emails are easy. It's smcdowell@nam.net. You can visit our website. You can follow us on social. There's any number of ways you can hang out with us.
All right, so connect with Scott and his team there in Indianapolis, as well as Nate Milliken and the entire team there in Indiana. So Scott, thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again in Indy this summer. And for those of you watching at home, your road to Indy and your road back home should include a quick side trip to Southern Seminary and Boyce College. Their beautiful campus is located just minutes off of Interstate 65 right there in Louisville, and Southern and Boyce College will make this a rest stop like none you've ever experienced. Go to sbts.edu/road trip to see what Southern has planned for SBC 24 road trippers just like you. That's sbts.edu/road trip for the information from Southern Seminary. Again, don't forget that Messenger pre-registration and childcare registration are now open at sbcannualmeeting.net. And be sure to register, and we will see you on the next episode of The Road to Indy, presented by Southern Seminary and Boyce College, as we talk about family fun and all the food to eat in Indianapolis.